Hey everybody, we're back here with section 2 of the Great Depression and the New Deal. With this section, we're going to look at how FDR goes about implementing his New Deal programs to try and fight the Great Depression. A couple things I want to make sure that you remember. Right, first and foremost, if you're going through the notes or going through the video and there's something that you didn't quite understand, you wanted to hear me go back over again, then simply just rewind the movie and go back and look at it. Or you can write a question down on the side of your notes. Right, remember, we're trying to make this seem like it's me and you sitting together at my desk and we're going back over this. Right, so if you didn't understand something, just jot the question down, and then the next work day we can go back and look over it. All right, so looking at him, we know when we finished section 1, we talked about the stock market crash. We talked about how President Hoover was considered the do-nothing president. Okay, when Roosevelt gets elected, the country's going to have to wait, all right, a little while for him to come in office. So he comes up with this New Deal program, or the New Deal program to fight the Great Depression. Now, there are 3 things that he's aiming to do, and I want to make sure you put a number next to the 3 of these. Okay, here would be the 3. All right, first one is relief to the needy. Now, another word for relief we learned in the first section was help. Okay, he wanted to make sure he helped those people who were in need of assistance. Right, he wanted to implement programs that help the agriculture and industry areas of the economy to recover, and then he wanted to reform or make changes to the economy to make sure another Great Depression, to keep another one from happening in the future. Right, now here's what I started to talk about before about how he's elected in November, right? But he doesn't take in the 1930s, right? He would not take office until March, right? And we've since made changes to this, so we're looking at this long time, November to March period, right? That people had to kind of sit around and wait for him to become inaugurated in order for his New Deal programs to be implemented. Now, FDR didn't waste any time. Okay, he met with his advisors. They became known as his brain trust. Okay, and these were experts on economic affairs, experts in the business and industry. Okay, and he took their advice and met with them to find out what is the best solution for our country to have going forward. Right, and just a couple of pictures. Okay, this is we were going to do an activity, but we had the snow day last week. We'll see if we can squeeze it in, where we look at his inaugural speech, where he had that one famous line: "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself." Right, and he says, that's the reason why the Great Depression is so strong, and that's the biggest obstacle, is we need to overcome our fear, right, of banks failing, of the stock market, of losing money. And if we could overcome that fear, we would be able to pull ourselves out of the Great Depression. Now, this is a very famous or funny political cartoon. All right, so just if you have to hit pause to kind of go through it and look at it on your own. But we know that this guy here is FDR. His briefcase says Roosevelt. Right, we know this is the White House because of the flag. All right, he is coming into the White House and he has all of these problems, right, sitting here waiting for him. So look at each of them here. We got prohibition. That says the economy. It's a little cut off over here. Tariff, taxation, war debt, farm relief, unemployment, the world court. Okay, these are all things that are waiting for him, all right, as he comes into the White House, as he becomes president. All right, this is something that's still around today. Every president since FDR has been evaluated or measured on their first 100 days as president. Right, which exactly like the name implies. All right, we're looking at what they accomplished in their first 100 days in office. Now, FDR, once he is finally able to be inaugurated, he is going to get to work immediately. In his mind, right, he didn't have any time to waste because Americans were suffering, right, and every day that he delayed, they were suffering even more. So these are the 3 things that he does right off the bat. And I wanted to get all 3 of them out there so that you can see them all at the same time, right? And you can see, right, it solves the issue of the banking system, all right? At least, he begins to solve the issue right up in front. And then the third one's a little bit different, right? But the first thing he does is he declares a bank holiday. Now, just like the term implies, when you go on a holiday, you don't have work. So he closes down all the banks in the country. Remember how we talked about banks gave out money and then they couldn't cover their loans anymore, and when people went to take their money out, the bank didn't have any money and they had to shut down. So he simply just declares a bank holiday, closes every single bank in the country. Right? This allows them time to restructure themselves, right, reorganize, and then he promises that the banks that open up after his bank holiday are banks that people could trust and people could feel confident putting their money back in. And then the third one, it's a little different because it doesn't necessarily, get into the economic side of it, but he has what are called fireside chats, where he would speak directly to the American people. You know, he'd set up in the White House microphones, and he'd speak into each of the major news channels, and people would listen on the radio. And he was making a personal connection with the American people, and he was telling them exactly what it was he was going to do to make their lives better. Now, up until this time, okay, this was a step that no president before him had taken, where he was, you know, letting the American people know exactly what his plan was and how he was going to go about doing it. Now, if we're looking at this, because President Obama was really one of the first presidents to really embrace this, right? What mode of communication do you think a president would use today if they wanted to have fireside chats? All right, now jot that down in your notes, and we'll be the first one who can tell me, right, the day after you finish your notes. Right. Another funny political cartoon. Okay, if we look in the top there, you can see who's running away. It's President Herbert Hoover. Right. We know that Uncle Sam always symbolizes the United States. He has the stars and stripes. He usually has the long white beard as well. And then we know that the flag here, this is FDR, and you can kind of see, you know, the U.S. is broken down and it's fallen into a hole. Right, and what's symbolized by FDR rolling his sleeves up is that he's ready to get to work. He's had to wait long enough. He's watched the country suffer. Now it's time to get involved and try and fix the country. All right, so there's his first fireside chat. The same day banks were opened, he tried to reassure and build that confidence in the American people. All right. And then, you know, he kind of said, like I was telling you before, have some confidence and trust in that bank, right? It was safer to put your money in a bank than it was in the mattress, right? Now, during this period, he is going to wield a tremendous amount of power. He's going to send a lot of bills and a lot of programs to Congress, right? And Congress is going to turn those bills into laws and make those programs legal acting programs, right? And this is all during that 100-day period where he is able to accomplish a lot. Right, these are some pictures of him giving some of his fireside chats. You can see families here on the side. The radio was kind of like our TV today, right? Most families had a radio, and that was their only link to what was going on around the country. Now, these are pictures of FDR giving his fireside chats. I want you to pay attention to the microphones, right? Because I was able to when in the Washington, D.C. in the National Museum, the Smithsonian Museum of American History, right, I was able to actually look at those actual microphones, and I recorded it, so I'll see if I can get that in here in the notes later tonight. Okay, this would be the actual microphone used.